Joining me from London is Ahmed Soliman, a Sudanese specialist and a fellow with the Africa program at Chatham House. Thank you so much for your time. It certainly looks like a military coup. So why did this happen?
Well, I think it is a military coup. It's clearly one, and it comes off the back of a lot of tension over the last couple of months and deteriorating relations between the civilian and military elements of the power-sharing transitional government in Sudan. Several incidents, including, another attempted coup, including tensions in the east of the country and a closure of the port of Sudan, as well as other issues have led to a fear that a hostile takeover by the military forces was on the cards. But the Prime Minister Hamdok, who is now in detention, has been searching to try and find a compromise to rebuild some of the consensus that has been lost between the two sides. But it seems that with so many groups wanting and having a different voice and stake in the country's future, that search for consensus has been elusive.
Now, we've just been hearing there from General al-Burhan, and he says that the military will be handing back power to a civilian transitional government and proposing to have elections by the end of 2023. So I want to ask you, Ahmed, do you believe them?
Well, I believe that perhaps they are committed to a form of transition, whether that is a genuinely democratic transition. I think their actions speak that they're not supportive of that. I think, what we've had here clearly is the military asserting their position over the last few months. Your piece talked about the handing over of the chairmanship of the highest body, the Sovereign Council, to a civilian leadership. That was something hanging over the military in terms of losing their authority. There was also really huge resistance from the military to any significant reform, unification of forces, and civilian oversight of their institutions and interests. So if this coup, as we're seeing, leads to the removal of the current civilian administration and its replacement by force, essentially, of a cabinet that is more friendly to the military's interests, then it's tantamount to throwing the power-sharing deal between the civilians and the military under the bus. It will not be leading towards, a democratically elected transitional rule, and it will undermine the prospects for Sudan holding credible elections in 2023.
And we're already seeing massive protests happen in cities in Sudan, notably in the capital, Khartoum. I mean, that certainly means that the instability, I imagine, is set to continue.
It looks that way. There will certainly be a contestation. That contestations will be in the corridors of power as well as on the streets. But I think the expression for the civilian movement will be on the streets, and without really the legitimacy from a large and very vocal portion of the Sudanese population, which you can see are expressing themselves now by coming out to the streets again in protest, as they did last Thursday and over the weekend, as well as the condemnation coming in from Sudan's international partners. It's really very difficult to understand what the military is trying to achieve. And as you say, the likelihood for further contestation, for an increase in violence between civilian forces and those armed forces on the side of the generals is increased. And of course, you also have the international situation where Sudan has been coming back into the international fold, and its economic recovery is reliant on international support. And the key donor countries and the World Bank have made it, and the IMF have made it extremely clear that this engagement, this support for Sudan is contingent on the political transition moving forward. So that puts these processes in line into jeopardy as well.
Ahmed Soliman from Chatham House, thank you so much for your time.